Welcome back. Today we are talking with Justin Merhoff about accessibility in cyber plans and our business continuity plans and resilience initiatives. Justin, in the first segment, a lot of great information there. Thank you very much.
Thank
You
you.
mentioned risk. So I'm wondering, what is the risk to organizations that don't uh, um, focus on accessibility concerns or do anything about them? What is the risk?
So the risk is active now. I mean, especially for major organizations, just because one in five people working today have a disability. So if the risk is if the solutions, and what I mean by solutions, the documentation, the technical solutions, the security program itself, if the solutions aren't made for everyone to be able to be equally on the same path of being secure, that's the risk. If they're not trained, they're not going to use your security solutions. If the training is not accessible, that's your first risk, because then you're hoping that they know what to do. They're
Right.
going to be unguided and untrained. Okay. And then the solutions that you're asking them to do in that training that they didn't learn, if those solutions aren't accessible, then it's kind of broke. It's kind of pointless, right? So right now, people are actively having to circumvent your security to be able to do their jobs by, like we talked about in the last call, utilizing a friend or a partner or a stranger that's cited to help them. Or if it's cognitive, hey, I can't read this policy. I do not understand this. And have someone else read that for them and say, yeah, go ahead and sign it. That's a risk, right?
Right.
So because these disaster plans that we have, these companies are supposed to reach everyone in the company. Are Does everyone in the company have a technical background and an expert in disaster recovery? No.
No,
So it needs to be consumable.
some of these people are expected to respond to a
Right.
list of,
Right.
I don't know, activities or something. But if they can't read or access it, well, then it's going to slow down what you expect to happen.
Right. So there's active risks right now. And I'd even say if you have a publicly traded company, you might want to get in, you might want to start looking at this, because if you're not making sure that your solutions are accessible, that response time that you have if you have an incident, I mean, you're going to probably potentially have more incidents because you have people working at your company that are untrained.
And they could actually, you're also, I guess, in a way, ignoring the feedback and input to some of these plans from people who you, I don't want to say ignoring, that might not be the right word, but haven't been addressing,
Right.
because they can't read or access these plans, but they may have some good ideas.
That I'm so glad. Okay. I love your angle there. I'm so glad you just said that. Exactly. So if we make things more accessible, it will become more inclusive, because if we allow people to access it and utilize it, then they can give you actual user feedback. They're not even being able to use it. They probably don't want to tell you that they're circumventing your security because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. But it's the only option to them
Right.
because we're not addressing the concerns. We're not being inclusive with them.
Right. And let's take neurodiversity into perspective at this. So, like, to your point, I think you stated, like, or it's true, is, well, why don't they ask for it? Right. Okay. Most people are already intimidated by the security team. Most people don't really want to talk to us. Right.
Yeah, you're falling into the same category as the audit team.
Right. Exactly. So, if we're not approachable, if we don't treat it as advisors, like, to the company and making sure that they're safe, they're never going to come talk to us. And that's another thing, is you mentioned the risk. Well, here's the other risk. We're wanting to make sure that our security awareness and culture programs are inclusive. Well, we're at risk because they're not.
Right. So how do you go if you, let's say we do have these plans and we have started to address some of the accessibility concerns. How do we go about validating that what we're doing is correct? Like how do we involve everybody with that?
I again, I think it goes back to to feedback loops. Not everyone's going to have it, but even with your documentation, like let's be to me, I think businesses are becoming more transparent and wanting to hear from and not just dictate policies down. Have just like NIST does, have your policies open for comments for a certain period of time and say, hey, we're working on the policies. I'll you know what, I just came up with that. I'm gonna even try to do that. Like have user comments. We already have user comments, but to actually officially do that, I'm gonna write that down. That's a good idea. Like I have user involvement, like not too much. I understand that not all of the feedback is going to be used, but you have to take that, right? It's going to happen, but just be open and transparent because this program is for them. It's not you. That's the other problem is most security programs and risk programs are seen as it's them. It's no, we're trying to protect you and the company. So we all have to interact with this. And if it's not accessible, not everyone can do it.
And that kind of creates that them versus us type mentality.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And we need
I,
to break that down.
yeah. I like the point you just made about involvement as well. If you're if you're opening up your policies to everybody to provide input and thoughts, and to your point, not doesn't mean every single thing will be adopted, but that also helps create a culture, a better
Bingo.
culture within the organization, right?
And ownership of
Yeah.
being part of the program, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that certainly would help with our resilience plans and business continuity plans, because then uh, it doesn't matter. There could be somebody who has 20/20 vision and somebody who doesn't have as strong as vision could still be the backup to the other person. And if everyone is contributing, well, then you're not leaving out people either. Or you have a disability, because I don't want to say I've seen it, but I've heard it talked about that in an organization years ago. Well, no, we can't use that person because XYZ, reason, and which isn't
I'm
good.
shaking my head.
Yeah, it's not good. But at the same time, if we do this, then we can actually change that mentality. It's like, hey, I don't care if that person has any kind of challenges, whatever they are, they can still be my backup because we have considered their concerns. We are addressing accessibility.
Yes. Yes, because you're including them.
Yeah,
Like it and then yeah, I could go down. Yeah.
go ahead, say more. I know you want to.
It's because we we need to be teaching accessibility in actual schools, like in the states K through 12, like in element, because it's awareness. It's literally awareness. Like I'm not. I don't believe most people are doing this intentionally. And like you said, there are people that do. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I think we're so focused on the fact that there are so many risks that we're tracking, right? That we are aware of and we're trying. Actually, you know what? That goes to my point. They're probably not looking for the risks in accessibility because they weren't taught to look for that risk in the GRC course that they were taught.
Right.
So why would they go look for it? It's completely not in there. I'm using my hands like it's to like widen, like it's not in their left or right. Like they don't know.
Kind of one of those they don't know what they don't know type
Yes,
situations.
correct.
But if it's brought forward, even in one date, this is a concern you need to talk about when you get into your business life, then
Right.
it's something that's going to trigger at some point going, hey, have we ever considered accessibility here?
And the other risk is lawsuits
Mm,
because in Canada, in the US, in Europe, there are laws already that are being broken right now by companies that it's just happening. And until that gets brought up and they get aware of it, it's going to continue to happen. So the other challenge that people will see when they try to make their security programs and risk programs and disaster recovery programs accessible is the tooling is not accessible because a lot of our industry we utilize digital tools, right? Well, they're not accessible. But what we're going to need is we're going to need these security teams and architects to understand about accessibility. So when they're looking at the tool, that's one of the checks. Hey, is this accessible? That's 100% something that the security team can add to when they're doing vendor risk assessments.
yeah, because there's a lot of organizations right now, and I see it, and I was actually in a meeting the other day where someone said, okay, when we go live with this product, let's make sure we do the testing for the web and mobile. So it's, well, if you're doing that now, is it accessible either way for somebody? It's like another
Good point.
requirement for your project, you know,
Mm-hmm.
internal and external, for your internal users and hopefully your external buyers or, purchasers, partners.
Right. Exactly. And another aspect that I think is actually good for companies is I think buyers and partners and other companies they want to work with companies that are inclusive. I think that does matter. I mean, I know that I've heard of people not taking roles because they looked into the DEI program and it wasn't to what they wanted, so they went with the other role.
Do you think that sometimes organizations, I should say, uh, try to just cover the surface,
Yes.
make it look like DEI? The biggest part of that is the visual, because we see that. But then
Right.
when you dig deeper, it doesn't matter. You still are not empowered. You still aren't inclusive. You still don't get to provide your feedback. All the other pieces. And I know there's a lot more than that, but it's just a visual. So accessibility, the same thing. If we look as though we're accessible, then that's fine.
Right.
So we
Right.
won't go deeper into it.
Well, I'll even say this, and I will call them out. There are authors of DEI books that only have hardcover versions. How is that in this day and age an inclusive medium for a book? And I've heard, well, it's on the publisher. It go make it so. Like what are we freaking talking about? Like
Yeah,
if you want your content to be consumable, find a publisher that supports it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like that just doesn't compute to me. And then the other portion is I don't think that most DI programs, even if they're fully good and running, some are, but in my short understanding and talking with my colleagues, accessibility is often missed in an inclusion. Because if it was truly included, we wouldn't be having this conversation that the solutions aren't accessible.
Right. Yeah, agreed. So with executives, how do we get about getting them to make a change? Because change tends to happen from the top down, whether we like it or not. How do you go about getting them to make a change, to spread that out to the organization, to make accessibility a an initiative, a concern, or a part of DEI, or how do you go about getting them to change, or the board of directors? How do you get it
Depending
on
on
their
the
plate?
leadership, I think it depends on the leadership in the company, but I'll give a couple. I mean, tell them the money, right? Like you're missing out on a huge portion of of budget. I don't want to botch this, but I believe the website is Billion Strong, or it's Billion Dash Strong, and it talks about there's over 1 billion people that have disabilities in this world. So are you excluding them from consuming your product? Yes, you are, if
Yeah,
it's not accessible, right? So that's one. So if we're talking like with product, and then two, I think, again, it's awareness, like that we need to get the security leadership and the people that are in our industry that are the leaders that are shaping like what the CISOs cover and what is important. Accessibility needs to be in that conversation, because you're talking about all this stuff at these conferences, and all these great tools that you're making, they're not accessible. So, I mean, it's just completely missing it. Um, Hearing stories of people once they're, brave enough to share that, I think that will help. Um, Awareness labs, there are different ways. I think there's some in Canada, but trying to relate and put yourself in their shoes. Um, even like a little exercise of, closing your eyes and trying to listen to what we're talking about right now. And if I'm making hand motions and everything, which I am right now in the video, if I didn't tell you that right now, you would have no idea. And if Alex makes a comment of, hey, weird hand movement, like you've probably listened to podcasts, and then you're like, oh, I probably need to watch the YouTube version because it didn't translate, right? Because there's something going on that there wasn't an audio description of. So you get what I'm saying?
yeah. How
Yeah.
do you how do you flip that? So we you just talked about leadership, what they can do. But if I am someone who is I have accessibility concerns or issues, how can I help educate? Go the other way. What kind of things can I do?
I think having I've read the book and done the train a crucial conversation. I think it it is going to be hard, and we cannot expect everyone to do this because we have people that are neurodiverse, and that's another thing. If there are people, you know, get an advocate to help you, right? There are people that want to help. So I'll put it out there. If you need to talk to your leadership, your security team, about making something accessible, my email is justin.merhoff@deque.com, and I will help you. I will help translate that for your team, because it's very important to me that we're really securing everyone. But I think it is. I think you're right, but we have to also understand that we cannot expect everyone to ask for that. So but I get your point. What is the other? Because you're looking for solutions.
Yeah, yeah. Like tips. What are the kind of things that we could do all around?
I have one that I'm doing right now, and I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
So on LinkedIn, I started a hashtag called uh, alt text of image in this post, where if someone posts an image that actually has content that needs to be consumed, because that's another thing. Not everything needs alt text, because if it's just decorative, then it's just kind of a waste of time. Like, don't really tell them. But if it has like details about an event or something on it, and you don't talk about that in the post, well, you need to provide alt text to that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we've come to the last 4 minutes of our show. Do you have any final thoughts or messages you'd like to convey that maybe we haven't touched on, or you want to reiterate?
I think that just remember that these programs are not one people, it's the organizations, and it's part of the culture. And to truly do that, you need to be You need to understand what the culture is. So here's a challenge. Go back to your organization and see if you actually are doing this. If you are, and if you are, please let me know how you're doing it, because that would be awesome, because I would love to learn. But I'm pretty confident that it's not at most organizations, and that I don't want to silo this information, right? I'm not charging for this. Like, that's why I also want to do these shows. Is I want more people to become aware so that we can actually get this change. I cannot do this by myself.
Right.
The other thing too is we'll talk more about it in the next. We'll do a little teaser. Is I think we also need to make sure that the regulations around the risk programs, they need to be made accessible, and we can talk about that more.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes. You can mention it now.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the regulations like NIST that back, and different, control sets that back the disaster recovery programs and everything, if it says how to build a program and it doesn't state that it needs to be accessible, then you're kind of missing the mark. And then the actual regulation itself, those need to become accessible, because there are images and tables and different elements that are not able to be consumed by people with assistive technologies.
Right. Well, Justin, we've come to the end of the show. Thank
Awesome.
you so much for sharing all your insights on this topic.
Awesome.
It was really insightful.
Thank
I
you.
think there's a lot of new thoughts here, and I hope a lot of people in our industry and other industries really pay attention to this, because
Appreciate
we
it.
are missing out. If
Thank
we
you, Alex.
and we shouldn't be excluding anybody. And so I really enjoyed what you had to say and what you had to share today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. And if anyone wants to learn more, please reach out. Thank you so much.
Will do. And everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.